go. Okay. The first thing we'll do, as I usually say, is, we'll have a rub salt on wound session. So it's going to sting a little bit, but I think it's going to be good in the long run. Basically, we'll talk about the test questions again and kind of explain how I would grade the exam so that you guys have certain expectations already. And also explain the correct answer. I don't think there are any big surprises in this test. Maybe question 4 is a little bit hard, but all the other questions, should be fairly easy to deal with. So we'll go ahead and talk about that. How many people actually read through the instructions? Very good. It's very important to read through the instructions, even though there should be nothing, unexpected in this case. Now, particularly, I think, I try my best to describe, what standard I want to use for, code tracing. This is consistent, at least in my opinion, with what we do in the class. Okay, all of this stuff we have done already, again and again, as well as the pre and post conditions, what I expect from the pre and post condition derivations. So I try to spell out as much as I can so that people know exactly what I expect, from the traces and also from the pre and post conditions. So we'll go ahead and get started. There are two versions of the test, by the way. They are only different by the constants. Okay, but there are 2 different versions. So if this is not exactly what you saw, don't worry. You probably did it just right, just fine with yours. It's just that I have 2 sets of questions. Okay, so we'll get started with the first question, and I would use a spreadsheet to do it, just like usual. So we'll go to Office, start a spreadsheet. My Friday class actually got to use, they took the test online, on Moodle, because on Fridays in the morning at 8 o'clock, the lab is usually pretty empty. Like, there will be like only 1 or 2 students in the lab on Fridays. So you might think that you guys missed out a lot because you could not use a computer to take the test. Well, I'm not so sure. Because the people who took the test using the computer, one, they cannot easily freehand and edit stuff. Okay, they have to use the software to edit stuff, and they have to use OpenOffice to do the trace. Some students apparently do not know enough about OpenOffice or Microsoft Office Excel to kind of get around the spreadsheets quickly. Some students have problems downloading the spreadsheet first because they just click it in, they just click the link, which opens up the spreadsheet in a read-only fashion, and then they found out that they could not type anything, and then I have to walk over, tell them, okay, use save as, and then you can edit it. And then when they save as, and after typing, they forgot where they saved the document. Then they raise their hand, I have to walk over again and tell them, okay, this is how you find out where you saved the document, and so on and so forth. So I think in the end, at least for some students, taking the test online was actually not beneficial. If it were just on paper, they would have been better off. Some students ran out of time to upload the file. Okay, I told them you have 5 minutes left. It's time to get ready to upload everything. No, did not do anything. You have 2 minutes. You have 1 minute. You have 10 seconds. Oh, and then start to scramble and try to find the files, try to upload it back to the server. And by the time they got to the right link and the right file, it's already time's up already. Okay, so I think taking the test, on a in a offline fashion may not be a disadvantage to at least some students. I know some of you are really savvy with a computer and you can do it much faster with a computer. But in general, I don't think it is the case with, at least with my other class. So in this case, some students ask, but there's no sheet 2 is empty, because they were expecting sheet 2 to have all this stuff already pre-typed. When I said it, well, since the face-to-face class or the class that is taking the test offline, I cannot give them the template, so you guys are not getting the template either. They could not do it. They just could not type the column headers and whatnot. They could not figure out what to do. All right, so we have the precondition, and the precondition or the pre-line is just saying what are the precondition of this program. we have x equals to 400 and y equals to 398. So x starts with 400, y starts with 398. And that's all I'm expecting from the pre-line. Okay. If you guys want to, you can also shrink, just use as little space as possible. But on a piece of paper, it really does not matter. As long as I can line up the columns, it will be fine. Any questions so far? This line by itself may or may not have any partial credit. I really have not decided on how many points to assign to what feature. I think it is something that people should know how to do already, and it really should not have partial credit at this point. So we start with line 1. Now line 1 is important because we have to indicate what is x is greater than or equal to y. Is it true or is it false? It is true. Very good. And then where do we go? We go to line 2. Very good. Now just here, knowing that the condition is true on line 1 and we are transitioning to line 2 as a result, that is going to have partial credit already. Okay, if someone turns in only about this part, that person will get partial credit. Not a whole lot, but nonetheless some point values just for doing this part. Okay, as I already said in the class, I don't really care about the very end result. The end result can be off or wrong, but what I'm more concerned about is whether people understand the concepts and can apply the concepts. What about line 2? Line 2 is the beginning of a loop, and it is asking the question, y is less than or equal to x. Is that true or is it false? It is true because it's the same condition, isn't it? It's exactly the same condition. Okay. Then where do we go? This is a loop here. This is a pre-checking loop. So if the condition of a pre-checking loop is true, where do we go? In this case, we go to line 3. Very good. So this is also what I'll be looking for, is the condition of line 2 is evaluated. It is true. And as a result, we go to line 3. Okay. Are there any questions of what I'm expecting or what I'm looking for when I look at the submissions? No questions? This is all good? Okay. What do we do on line 3? Line 3 is an assignment statement. Do we know what to do with it? It's adding 1 to y, right? And putting it back into y. Y had a value of 398, so adding 1 to that, it will become 399. And then where do we go? We go back to line 2. So that is also something that I'll be looking for, is after line 3, we go back to line 2. Because after we are done with the content of a pre-checking loop, we have to go back to the beginning and test the condition again. The next iteration is basically just chore, because x is greater than or equal to y is true. 399, 400 is greater than or equal to 399.
Should be y is less than
Number 2.
Oh, right, okay.
Y
Y is
is less than
less than or equal to x is true. We go back to line 3. Line 3 updates it to 400. We go back to line 2. Are we done yet? No, we're not done yet, because it's asking y is less than or equal to x. 400 is less than or equal to 400. Okay, so we are not quite done yet. We still say that it is true. We go back to line 3. It goes to 401. Then we go back to line 2. This time, y is less than or equal to x is false. And where do we go next? We go to line 5. Whatever is after the loop, right? And there is code after the loop, which is on line 5. So we go to line 5. For some reason, I decided to reset the value of x. So x now gets a value of 0. And then where do we go? We go to post. Very good. So this transition is worth partial credit also, because it indicates to me that that person knows what happens when the condition of a pre-checking loop is false, and then we have to get out of the loop and continue execution with whatever is after the loop. Okay? Any questions about question number 1?
And then this is not an infinite loop.
It is not an infinite loop. It will exit. Yep. Now, since we are here, we might as well just handle question number 3 also, because question number 3 is exactly the same, except we begin with x equals to 300 and y equals to 300. So the initial conditions is a little bit different, but otherwise it's the same algorithm. Since we're here already, we might as well just do that. Let me save the file first, just to be sure. 2010 5. And we'll call this exam 1, Q1, Q3, because we are containing both of those answers here. Okay, so we have the same thing. We have line number x and y. This time they both start with 300, and the line number is 1 in this case. Whoops, 3. Okay, there we go. On line 1, we are still asking the same question. Let me switch back to the code here. So on line 1, is that true? Is x greater than or equal to y? Is that true or not? It is true. 300 is greater than or equal to 300. As a result, we go to line 2. Line 2 is asking y is less than or equal to x. It is true. We go to line 3. We bump the value of y up by 1. It becomes 301. We go back to line 2. The condition now becomes false. And then we exit the loop. We go to line 5. We still put a 0 into x, and then we are done. Okay. Are there any questions about these two questions? Or the answers to these two questions? Nope. Okay. So go ahead and make sure I saved it again. The second question, question number 2, is the typical pre and post condition stuff that we talked about in the class. I do not think that this is particularly tricky because this is a fairly straightforward conditional statement. One branch executes when x is greater than y. The other branch executes when x is not greater than y. The individual statements inside the branches, one is a assignment to bump the value of x up by 1. The other one is copying the value of x into y. Also fairly straightforward things that we have talked about in the class. So I do not think this is particularly tricky. We'll go ahead and look at the solution anyway. So let me save the file first so I know where to find it later. Okay, so this is exam 1, question number 2. Pre-1 is already given to you, and it is not true. Okay, it's not just the expression true. What do we do next? Well, it's already suggested in the question, right? In the question, I already said derive pre-2, pre-4, post-2, post-4, and post-5. I did not say specifically in that specific order, but the way I listed is a proper order to evaluate and to derive the results. Okay, you can change the order a little bit. In other words, you can derive pre-2, post-2, pre-4, post-4. You can change the order just a little bit, but other than that, this is a good order to follow. So the next thing we want to do is to figure out what is pre-2. In this case, pre-2 is pre-1 and the condition of the conditional statement, like that. If someone gives me only this much, that person would have gotten some partial credit. Because that shows me that person knows that pre-2 depends on pre-1, and on top of that, it also depends on the condition of the conditional statement. Well, since we're with pre-2, we might as well work with pre-4, which is about the same thing. So pre-4 is pre-1 and not